What a day. What a surprising news story to start this day. And just when you think there's a bit of a lull in Steelers news, and just when you think the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe are quiet for a little bit, we hear a bomb. The Pittsburgh Steelers drop a bomb, and the bomb of this day is announcing an extension for head coach Mike Tomlin. So not only is Mike Tomlin still the Steelers head coach for this upcoming season, but this extension answers some questions that many had wondered, many like myself had wondered, if Mike Tomlin himself even wants to undergo a potential rebuild with another quarterback. Tomlin and Ben have been tied together more than any other quarterback and coach have really been tied together, with the exception, of course, of Belichick and Brady in their era. And would Tomlin want to undergo another rebuild, a rebuild with another quarterback? Because if you have another quarterback, it is in a way a rebuild. Would Tomlin want to undergo that? Would Kevin Colbert want to undergo that? That's still a question mark, and likely the answer being no. And Ben likely not back after this next season. But we now know Mike Tomlin will be, as Mike Tomlin extended until 2024. So 3 more years for Mike Tomlin. And that brings you this live edition here of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And of course, Steelers Now. We've covered it all throughout the day on SteelersNow.com. Tomlin going to be around for a few more years. So while next season is about trying to win now, the thinking process has to be that continuing on. We'll see how that pegs into the draft, if they go quarterback or when they go quarterback, and if they try to find that guy now, since it's very unlikely they're going to find one of the elite quarterbacks in the draft where they're selecting, and certainly unlikely they're going to be trading up to get that guy right now. Does that change anything there? How does Tomlin being around for a few more years change anything at all for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Does it? Maybe not at all. Does it at least answer a question now to all of us in the public, fans and media, that maybe they already knew? And why did the Steelers make this decision? That's what I want to touch on here more than anything else. My thoughts on why the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to extend Mike Tomlin, because this is one of the most polarizing topics around Pittsburgh sports, certainly around the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tomlin's resume is clear. It's going to eventually send him into Canton. It will get him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There are others that have been enshrined, that have received votes, that have an equal or lesser resume than Tomlin's already put together. But only 3 playoff victories in that last decade. 2 of them certainly less than impressive, so only really 1 truly impressive win in the postseason in that last decade. Playoff disappointments galore. Missed postseason appearances, granted, dealing with injuries and other situations. And last year, despite the 11-0 start in the division title, having that season putter away, and then the embarrassing loss in the postseason to the Cleveland Browns. So we will get into all of that for sure on this program. I'm going to give my thoughts on why the Steelers made this decision, and then if I feel it was right. Because I can get a lot of things, and I said this on Twitter. I understand the Steelers keeping Mike Tomlin to this point. I even understand the Steelers thinking to themselves and handling this like they have in the past, with Chuck Noll being allowed to linger around and decide to walk away after a decade of mediocrity at the end of his career, after those 4 Lombardis and that dynasty. And I get allowing Cowher to have multiple losing seasons until winning that elusive championship. And I get maybe other franchises, maybe other fan bases wouldn't want to put up with that. And I get that in this day and age, maybe that wouldn't occur. But I think it's clear it would occur with this Pittsburgh Steeler team. I think it would occur with this Pittsburgh Steeler franchise and with the Rooney family, and somebody's last name being Rooney, or Rooney II now, still in charge of this situation. I think that is clear. If you want to join in, feel free to join in on the chat. And I will just kind of get us started here with my thoughts on why this occurred. And I will tell you right now why the Steelers extended Mike Tomlin. It doesn't require that much thinking, to be completely honest with you. It's kind of cut and dry for me. And again, I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know if I love the decision. I actually did a show, and I will admit this right now, that maybe the Ben Tomlin era should come to an end. Maybe this past season should have been the close of it. Obviously, Ben back for one more year. I don't know if I really feel that Ben being back for one more year is going to lead to a championship. I certainly don't, but I get why it's occurring. On Mike Tomlin's point, I think there has to be some blame for what's gone on with Antonio Brown, with maybe not reining in the troops enough. I think there has to be some blame for just in general, maybe letting the inmates run the asylum too much. And for whatever the reason may be, having those postseason disappointments and allowing seasons to get away from you. Yes, the Super Bowl is there. Yes, the 2 appearances are there. Yes, the 3 AFC title appearances are there. Yes, the division titles, the fact that he's never had a losing season. Yes, it's there. 145 wins, a 650 win percentage. Yes, it's there, but the past decade's there too. The standard maybe should be higher. I get it. And others with a similar resume. Mike McCarthy let go with an historic franchise making that decision. John Harbaugh, though, not able to continue on with the Ravens. Those are 2 polar examples. Those are 2 equal examples with 2 polar opposite decisions being made. And Tomlin, of course, still now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, mic drop here. I'm Mike Asti. And the reason why, though, this is happening, because I get everything I said to this point, the reason why this is occurring, they want stability. The Pittsburgh Steelers want stability, and the Pittsburgh Steelers clearly covet stability more than any other franchise. Clearly. You're going back to the merger. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't fire head coaches. Name me another pro sports franchise that can say that. Name me another one. And I'm including wildly successful franchises. They can't say that. So that's something the Steelers absolutely hang their hat on. That's something the Steelers absolutely like that is a part of their franchise. And they've hired 3 guys. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, now Mike Tomlin. All 3 of those guys are going to get to Canton. All 3 of those guys are going to be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They like stability, but they made the right decision. And to be fair, because somebody could say, well, maybe they kept Tomlin, they're keeping Tomlin because they feel like they can't get a better guy. There's not a better guy with that cachet out there. Maybe that's true, but I think it's irrelevant to the Steelers' mindset. When they hired Chuck Noll, nobody knew who he was. When they hired Bill Cowher, people might know who he was in football circles, but he certainly didn't have a Hall of Fame resume. I'm Marty Schottenheimer disciple. He was an assistant. When the Steelers hired Mike Tomlin, he was an assistant under Tony Dungy, who had a similar path to what Tomlin's dealt with Pittsburgh in terms of eventually being let go by the Buccaneers. So I'll maybe connect those dots later. But it's not like they hired guys with rings on the finger. It's not like they hired guys that had tons of prestige. It's not like when the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones hired Bill Parcells, getting him out of retirement, already a Hall of Fame head coach. No, this is not that. This is not even the Washington football team, formerly Redskins, bringing in Joe Gibbs again, who already did it there, and then bringing him back and having the cachet. This isn't even hiring some distinguished college coach and sprinkling some magic dust and saying this at least will win a press conference. When Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin were hired, I don't think I would say people were mad about the hires or were saying they were bad hires. It was more the unknown. They had solid assistant coach resumes, Cowher and Tomlin. You can't be mad at it. But nobody was going to brag and guarantee Lombardis because they hadn't done it yet as a head coach. It was more wait and see. So they have hired those 3 guys. Those 3 guys were right decisions, clearly, regardless of how you feel now. You win a Lombardi, you have the resume Tomlin's had. Noll, Cowher, and Tomlin, the right decisions to hire those 3. Can't argue that. They're going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. 2 of them are already in the Hall of Fame someday, but Cowher or Tomlin will join Cowher and Noll. So the Steelers like stability. They like waiting in the wings and giving their guy time. Again, they let Cowher deal with multiple losing seasons. I think what they're saying off of last year, and it would take a lot more. They don't fire head coaches, of course, even if last year wasn't what it was. But they see 11-0. They see a division title. And you have to remember, fans, which I think some do forget, that yes, and I've criticized this team. Go back to the post-game shows. Go back to any of my shows. I gave you instant reaction. I gave you reaction. I let simmer. I criticize and say, you can't let that season get away from you. That was maybe the most embarrassing loss in franchise history, to lose that game to the Browns without even being in the game. You're immediately getting blown out from Jump Street. And some of that has to go on Tomlin. And the way Antonio Brown was handled, Le'Veon Bell was handled, different players were handled, has to go on Tomlin. Yes, you want to have veteran leaders, Cam Hayward, etc., but you can't require your players to do your dirty work. You got to be the parent. And he's sometimes maybe too much of a player's coach. Antonio Brown let off the rails. And that has to fall in a way on Tomlin, even though Antonio Brown's a complete basket case, and maybe that was just bound to happen anyway. I've talked to some former Steelers like Jeff Reed, who basically told me that was guaranteed to occur anyway. But Tomlin still got to have some culpability there as the head coach, fair or not. It's lack of institutional control, for a college football term, the very least. That got to go on Tomlin. But they then see, the Rooney family then sees last year, division title, 11-0 start. Nobody predicted that before the season, guys. Remember that, okay? I didn't. Maybe some thought they could make the playoffs and be okay. Nobody thought 11-0 to start. Nobody thought the division title, probably. Baltimore was the favorite entering the season. They were the defending AFC North champion for a reason. And you could say what you want about the 11-0 start and Ben being more of a point guard and Ben not being asked to do as much as he was later when the season got away and they got lucky in some games. I detailed it all. I don't disagree. They did get lucky in some of those games. But you got to be lucky as well as being good to win consistently, and to eventually win championships in the National Football League. They didn't win that championship. They haven't in the last 10 years. Tomlin has in his career. But they were lucky, but they also had to be good enough. They had to do what they had to do to get that 11-0 start. And that has to mean something in terms of, as well as the division title. So I think the Rooney family clearly said to themselves, number one, we like stability. We love it. We love stability. Number two, we don't make wrong decisions in terms of head coaches. So we could make another one, but why mess this up now? Number three, this thing actually got improved. And maybe you could look at last year as better than advertised or better than expected, forgetting the end of the season, because the beginning of the season wasn't expected. Would you rather the team go 8-8 than what happened last year? The Steelers would not. That's clear. And again, Mike Tomlin's never gotten worse than 8-8 with his resume. And what I said at the top of the show, Kevin Colbert in flux, already rumors about him leaving earlier. I will tell you, I talked to a pretty close source. Well, I don't want to give it away, but somebody related to the man, I'll put it to you that way, who flat told me a couple years ago at training camp that Kevin was close to being done. Kevin Colbert was close to being done, and he wanted to just go off in retirement or some other challenge. He was maybe done with Pittsburgh at the end of that season. That would have been 2019. Clearly still here, clearly still around, didn't go to the Lions. So at least Colbert's going to oversee this drafting of maybe the future of the Steelers, because this and next year's draft are going to matter a lot for the future of this franchise, regardless of what happens this coming season. But Ben, 2 years at the very most, if everything goes well, but I think 99.9% sure this man's not playing after this next season. And as I'm speaking to you at this point next year, after a season, whether they're celebrating the Lombardi Trophy somehow, or the season got away from them again and they had a hot start and then lost in the playoffs, or they just sucked all the way through, or they were close and losing the AFC title game somehow, no matter what, and maybe that's the only way to try to convince him, Ben's not coming back. Because I think if Ben can prove his doubters wrong, he'll walk away that way. If Ben can't and he's just playing poorly, I don't think he wants to keep on sucking and have that maximize. So next year's it for Ben, for me. I'd be shocked if it's not, but obviously we don't know for sure. I'm not Ben, so say that's not the case. 2 years is max the end of Ben. Knowing all of that to be true, because you have three guys tied at the hip: Mike Tomlin, Kevin Colbert, and Ben Roethlisberger. Three guys, the man at the top in terms of an executive, the GM, the quarterback, the franchise quarterback who's going to the Hall of Fame, and a head coach who's going to the Hall of Fame, like it or not. When you have those three guys in complete continuity, you have them around for a period of time and they're in sync and they want to work together. They do. I'll tell you that. That usually breeds success. Now, again, only three playoff wins in the last 10 years. But no losing seasons, consistent contention. They do have a championship, all three together. They were in another one. They were in an AFC title game not long ago. And you have to remember they did do this during an era where the New England Patriots, with Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and maybe Robert Kraft included there as an owner, with Belichick kind of doing it all with the Colbert role, were together completing an incredible dynasty in this free agency period that we're probably never going to see ever again, as well as some other good teams that were there as well. But you're running into that. You're running into that buzzsaw. So you're in the same conference. That's a roadblock right away. But the Steelers having those three together, that's a triplets you want more than anything. That's a triplets you want together to be in sync and to have continuity, because that can breed success more than maybe having a triplets of quarterback, running back, and receiver. And go to my past shows. Obviously, some of those are needs, certainly running back. We'll talk about all of those on another program. This is, again, here, this is Mic Drop. I'm Mike Asti, of course, and this is Pittsburgh Sports Live and Steelers Now. Bottom of the video, if you like what you see in here, or really if you like anything else on the channel, hit that subscribe button. Help us get all of our content to you. It is free, thanks to our sponsors here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and throughout the Pittsburgh Sports Now family of networks. But the Steelers like stability. They like continuity. They have made the right decisions before, and standing pat with head coaches has worked out for the Steelers. They're all going to the Hall of Fame. They're all, two of the three are in the Hall of Fame already. The other's going there in Mike Tomlin. Some even criticize maybe that they take too long to make decisions on assistants, but they've made the right decision on head coaches. That cannot be argued. And they want to make sure that out of those three guys that I talked about, the continuity of Kevin Colbert, Ben Roethlisberger, and Mike Tomlin, those three that have led the Steelers the last 15 years together, at least, some give or take, they want to ensure one guy's around. Colbert's in complete question. Ben is incredibly unlikely beyond a season. And now we have our knowledge. It's clear. And they've ensured that one of those three guys will be around, because they want to have continuity. They don't want to have to replace the GM. They don't want to have to replace the quarterback and the head coach all within a 1 or 2 year period, all within the same year period in terms of a doomsday effect. They don't want that. They don't want to do it. Clearly, like it or not, they don't want to do it. So I think that Ben being close to the end, the fact the Steelers were close last year and were much better than the year before, of course, with Ben, even when he started to downturn towards the end, even with how bad the year ended eventually and how that should be held against him and how the last 10 years should be held against him, and the situation with AB in some way maybe should be held against him. With all of that being said, I think the fact that the Steelers did improve, they're still a winning team, they're still a contender, they've never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. The resume, the cachet, the Hall of Fame, it's all there. And knowing Ben Roethlisberger and Kevin Colbert are in question moving forward as you try to rebuild this thing and keep this moving, that actually made it easier to have them make the decision. We want to at least keep one here. Who can we keep here? Who makes the most sense? Who's the one guy that we know we can keep here moving forward? Obviously not Ben as a player. It's Mike Tomlin. So that answers that for me. That's clearly the reason here. Again, I see here in the chat 3 playoff wins in 10 years, and he gets extended. Tomlin, Dan Bilesma, that's an interesting connection. But of course, Dan Bilesma, despite the ring on his finger, not the same as Tomlin. Dan Bilesma not going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's not going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame like Tomlin will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not as long-term of success. And the Penguins, despite having the titles, they've been a roller coaster ride as a franchise. The Steelers have been a consistent contender for the most part and have never made a wrong decision as a head coach. The Penguins have made wrong decisions as head coach before. That's just a fact, despite, of course, the titles being what they are. And no one can take that away from the Penguins, but it's been a little different over the last 40 years. There's been periods of time where Penguin fans thought the team was leaving town and they were awful. The Steelers have never really been awful. There's been times where they weren't good. There's been times where they missed the playoffs, but they haven't had a losing record under Mike Tomlin. They missed the playoffs, but they haven't had a losing record under Mike Tomlin. That's just a lot to say. That really is. I mean, of course, Belichick's at the top, but that's a lot to say over the past 10 years. Now, to get it out of the way on why they made the decision, And they made the decision because they want stability. They want to ensure one of those three guys are there, and they want to do it with somebody that they're familiar with, that they know has at least provided a minimal level of success, certainly maximum at points, is going to be around for it. So I get it. Again, more, he'll never win another one. I hear, again, this is polarizing. This is why we're doing it. This is why the story brought so much out of the fans and media. Okay. The second it hit the wire, it's one of the most polarizing stories in Pittsburgh sports for sure. Would I have done it? Now, I get everything the Steelers are thinking about wanting to ensure one of the three guys are there, but no, I wouldn't have done it because I've always been a Tomlin guy in terms of defending him. Some still think I am secretly. It's not to say I'm not a Tomlin guy. It's that I've got to know the man a little bit covering the team back when we could do it in person, now just virtually still. But I respect him. As I said, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's a pro football Hall of Famer. There's no way in the world Bill Cowher can get in there. There's no way in the world Tony Dungy can get in there and not have Mike Tomlin. There's no way. 145 wins, a 650 win percentage, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 2 AFC titles, 1 Lombardi trophy to this point, 3 AFC championship game appearances, division titles, never a losing season, continuous contention, doing it while a part of every committee around, which you got to take that into consideration. Most successful African-American head coach overall. I would give him that. Tying for rings, but I would give him that overall with the body of work. And what he's meant to the league, Tomlin's going to get there. And Tomlin deserves to be there. I would never take that away from him. And I actually, despite doing the show recently about him, maybe it's time to end the Roethlisberger-Tomlin era because another embarrassing postseason loss, maybe you just eventually move on. You do have to have some culpability for that. If Ben's going to be back, that then would change my mind for at least this next season. And I could understand certainly of bringing Tomlin back for one more year in the recent contract of the 1 year with the option go into next year. But I do think it's fair to not give him an extension. This is the most money and the biggest extension Tomlin's received since being a rookie head coach, since the beginning of his tenure, since after winning a Super Bowl. And it's been a long way since then. 3 playoff appearances. More playoff appearances, but Mike Tomlin, 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years. Eventually, that got to be it. Forget AB and everything else. 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years. And some of those years, yes, last year, 11-0, maybe you didn't expect it. Yes, he may be overachieving. Some were saying coach of the year, including myself, at one point. And even the year before, dealing with Ben being hurt and Mason and Duck and a GQ model and a guy named Duck almost got you in the playoffs. If you had the current format, it would have been a postseason appearance. I get it. That's actually good coaching work. But eventually the overall totality has to come into place because they did lose that playoff game against Jacksonville. They shouldn't have lost that playoff game at home against Jacksonville with a real good Steelers team, a really talented Steelers team. They didn't get a Super Bowl ring with AB, Bell, and Ben, and only the one appearance with AB and Ben, and it was way back when AB was really, really young and not really driven by AB. With the 3 of them in their prime, they didn't get into one. And yes, you're in the middle of the Patriots, and yes, the Ravens, but some of that got to come back on you because on paper, your team was better. Defensively, your team had stars. Defensively, your team might have been better at points. And you're allowing a lot in some of those playoff losses and some of those big games to ruin years. Your defense is collapsing, and you're a defensive guy. You're a Tony Dungy disciple. So that has to eventually come into play, and I would have just been okay with moving on. I get going one more year, though. I get having him maybe tied with Ben. I get maybe saying last year was actually good, not horrible because of the 11-0 start. Maybe that wasn't expected despite the end of the season being so bad and being so embarrassing. And overall, it's still maybe the most embarrassing loss in franchise history. The Browns were good. They're not the old school Browns, and they made some moves, and they're going to be good again next year, by the way. But Baker Mayfield's stats were the same as Ben. It's not like they were incredible. They lost some games they shouldn't have lost. They were unimpressive at times, too. They were at the minimum the Steelers equal this whole year. You shouldn't get smacked around like that immediately from the opening kickoff. That's the problem, the way they lost the game. That has to fall on the coach in some way. But to extend him, to give him a mega deal, basically, to give him more money, to give him his biggest extension since early in his career, off of that, when you have the last 10 years as part of it, no, I wouldn't have done that. I would let him sweat a little bit. I would let him sweat a little bit if he really wants to be back with the Steelers. I get everything going on, but let him sweat. Make him work for it. Make him pick it up next year. Make the team decide or him decide about the option beyond that. Make it a decision. Make it a conversation, and it would be for you guys anyway. But there's no reason for me to jump on that. I get wanting to have some continuity, but make that decision afterwards. Okay, don't jump on it now. And it's almost rewarding the last 10 years with 3 playoff wins for me a little bit. That's kind of where I get sour on it. That's why I wouldn't have done it. But I will flip this. If I'm Mike Tomlin, I don't think I'd want to stay around for 3 more years. I don't think I would want the extension. And maybe, of course, he loves Pittsburgh. This is the only team he's ever been the head coach for. He's going to Hall of Fame anyway. But think of this. Number one, how's he possibly going to have his resume or his legacy or his perception improve with the Steelers right now with where this franchise is? Are they going to win a title next year? No. Are they maybe going to be good? Sure. But they've been recently. They didn't win a title, and that's, again, fans feel like the playoff disappointments have been the case. Are they even guaranteed the playoffs next year? No. Are they going to be good, a contender, win a title in the next 3 years up until 2024? No way to know right now. We have no idea what's going on at quarterback in the future. A lot of positions are certainly in flux. Yes, there are some nice young pieces. Devin Bush is going to be around. TJ is going to be around. Juju's not going to be around after another year. Maybe he will be somehow. The receiver corps maybe will still be fine, though, with Claypool and company. But there's no running back there. There's no continuity at running back. The secondary is certainly going to be even more a question after next year when some guys either have to move on again or retire, like, say, Joe Hayden. The line, Cam Hayward eventually choosing to make a decision in the middle there. Is he going to play all the way to 2024? If he ever leaves, that's going to be an issue there in terms of just locker room leadership. The team will get younger, but how good are they really going to be until 2024? Are they really going to be a title contender? Are they really going to win another Lombardi trophy? Are they really going to get back in the playoffs year after year? He's never had a losing season to this point. Again, 145 on the win total, 650 overall on the win percentage, no losing seasons. Only the one trophy, though, one Lombardi, which is still damn good because a lot of Hall of Fame coaches, Marty Schottenheimer, Bill Cowher's mentor, recently passed away, never even won that or got in that. So there's tons of coaches. Bill Parcells, only 2. Dick Vermeil, 1. Andy Reid, the 1. And it took him a long time despite a couple other appearances. Again, it's hard to win a title. I get it. And he has one. But that team didn't have to be built by him. He never had to foresee this kind of rebuild that he will have to see when Ben leaves, because that was Ben already a couple years in, basically getting to that elite level that he wasn't even at during Super Bowl 40. That was more of a team that led Ben along. Again, worst quarterback rating ever to win a Super Bowl. Ben was more of a game manager that year. And of course, second year makes sense. Certainly in his rookie year, the year before. But by that Super Bowl win, the Super Bowl 43, Ben was getting into that groove, and certainly getting into the groove in the Super Bowl loss against Green Bay and from then on. Tomlin's never had to deal with a quarterback who's not in the groove, who's not playing at that level. And even now, he's a veteran who's a smart, savvy veteran. Tomlin's never had to rebuild and deal with a young quarterback that even others and Bill Cowher had to deal with at times. So would you really want to do that if you're Mike Tomlin? I mean, he could always go down to D.C. Of course, they have a coach right now with Ron Rivera, but maybe they would move on from him for Tomlin. We know the Sun connection being down there in Maryland. That was something I thought maybe made sense a couple of years ago, honestly, if I was Tomlin, to try to get out of Pittsburgh. Does he really want to deal with this perception? Does he really want to deal with the legacy never being able to be increased? Because unless you win a title or unless you don't have disappointing playoff seasons, people are always going to point to 3 playoff wins in 10 years. If Mike Tomlin does not win a playoff game until 2024, if he does not at least win 1 or 2 playoff games from now until 2024, people are always going to say now 3 playoff wins in 15 years and 3 playoff wins in this decade plus. It's always going to be a problem no matter what he did early in his career. And the fact that Cowher won that ring late makes people forget 6 AFC championship appearances, the losses in those games when they were the favorite, and the losing seasons that Tomlin never had. Bill Cowher lost playoff games they shouldn't have lost too as a favorite. But you remember the end more than the beginning, and Tomlin's overall resume, while equal, while Hall of Fame worthy, so great in the beginning, not as great at the end, and that's going to be the problem. So unless Tomlin wins a playoff game until 2024, maybe one or two, you're always going to have that issue. You're always going to have that perception. If I'm Tomlin, I'd want a new challenge. I already know I'm going to the Hall of Fame. I already know I'm going to the Steelers Ring of Honor. Why not look for a new challenge? Why not try to figure something out? Why not take a year or two off, maybe? Take a break from people like me hounding you and the fans going crazy and yinsing up a storm, and pick your spot. I'm not saying take any job in the world, no losing team. Obviously, the Washington situation's okay right now. So if there's nothing else that makes sense for you, find some, something else. There other jobs can open. There are other places you can go that might be open at some point. Wouldn't be shocked if Chicago's open in the next year or so. Get yourself there. That's an historic franchise. Again, that could be similar with the fan base. That could be similar with mentality. You could administer yourself there. If Bruce Arians decides to walk away, maybe not, because they're in the midst of maybe building something still there in Tampa with Brady wanting to come back, but get yourself back down to Tampa, maybe to take over for Arians. Who knows, man? Their jobs can open up. You never know. Tomlin will be a coveted guy that every team in the league, for the most part, would be interested in if he would be made available. If I'm Tomlin, I want another challenge. Do I get why the Steelers are happy to have him for 3 more years and it made the decision to extend him? Yeah, I totally get it. Would I have done it? No, I'd let him wait in the wings a little bit. Do I get the last 10 years haven't been acceptable for the Steelers based on the standard? The standard is the standard, and the standard should be higher. Yeah. Do I get the resume is Hall of Fame worthy, and you shouldn't be just hating on him overall, even if you criticize him a bit for the last 10 years? Abso-freaking-lutely. So kind of in closing here, as I'm going to wrap this up, the Steelers clearly want to keep one of those three, Tomlin, Colbert, Ben, around for the next few years as they usher in now this next era of Steeler football. Not going to be Colbert, not going to be Ben for sure. So they picked Mike Tomlin. And the last few years have actually been solid coaching jobs, even though you blame him for the end of those seasons. You blame him for last year for sure. He does get blamed for only 3 playoff appearances, or 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years. So it's okay to blame Mike Tomlin for the past, and that's why I wouldn't have extended him, but the Steelers want the stability. I, though, say, when is the standard the standard? What is the standard in all reality? Why isn't the standard higher if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? Why is it for Green Bay for them to say a championship, playoff appearances, playoff wins, but not over the hump, we're done with Mike McCarthy? Why is that their standard, an historic franchise? But the Pittsburgh Steelers that have actually won more trophies, that are also an historic franchise that you could argue has been just as good or better in the last 10 plus years, don't have a higher standard because similar things occurred. Title, contention, winning, not enough in the postseason for a while, maybe a new era. But no, we're still not going to make the decision. We're still going to keep him around for a few more years. So what is the Steelers standard? Why is it not higher? I wouldn't have extended Mike Tomlin. I wouldn't have fired Mike Tomlin. I get they're never going to do that, but I wouldn't have extended him. And if I'm Mike Tomlin, I think I maybe wouldn't want to deal with this. I think his legacy overall as a head coach in this league would be better going into a new challenge. If he would go into a new challenge and lose for a few years, nobody would get on him as he's rebuilding something, or not win a title, certainly. But if he doesn't win a playoff game with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if he does not win another playoff game or 2, if he does not have at least 1 or 2 more playoff wins at minimum until 2024, people are always going to point to the lack of postseason success over the last decade and a half. So hold that against him. Hold the 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years against Mike Tomlin. And that, to me, has to be part of this. But he's basically been appointed a lifetime position. He basically has a lifetime appointment as Steelers head coach. He will make the decision probably at 2024 because it's not like they're going to win 2 games a year up until that point. They might even want to extend him beyond that if he wants to come back. They wanted continuity. They've always made the right decision. But should their standard be higher? I say yes. Should he have received an extension and more money and a reward, really? I say no, but I understand what the Steelers are thinking. That'll close things up here for this program. Again, this edition of Mic Drop and everything we do here on Pittsburgh Sports Live is aided by you clicking that subscribe button and helping us get our content to you as easy as possible. Again, thanks to our sponsors. That is free to do so. So click that subscribe button below this video. Also, follow us here for Steelers Now at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter, at PGH Sports Live for Pittsburgh Sports Live on Twitter, at Mike Asti 11 for myself on Twitter, and of course hit up SteelersNow.com for all our coverage of Tomlin's extension and everything else going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you go there today, that's pretty much the coverage right now. Good show, good news, appreciate it. I got some love there towards the end after the polarizing effect in the beginning, and I didn't really go to the chatters. There weren't enough of you, but I also the point of this was to get my takes out because I've been seething as well. And of course, this major news around the Pittsburgh Steelers parts and very, very polarizing. They wanted continuity. They didn't want to disrupt that. They wanted Tomlin there if they couldn't have Colbert and Ben for those next few years, but I wouldn't have done it. Let him sweat a little bit. You gotta do more than 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years. I get keeping him for a little bit, but an extension, money, a reward based on the last decade, I don't know about that. But that's the decision the Steelers made. Mike McCarthy, Tony Dungy, similar resumes, didn't get it done. They had to have somebody else win that ring for Tampa Bay, and Dungy had to go get his later. Sometimes maybe it'll actually be better. Maybe it would have been better for Mike Tomlin to move on. That's not the case. He's going to be there until 2024 at minimum, and we'll see beyond then. I'm not so sure that's even the end of this chapter right now because they're not going to be losing real bad up until that point, but we'll see how they rebuild things. Are they a title winner next year? No. Appreciate your work. Appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, guys. But will Tomlin be there? Yeah. So you evaluate it how you want. Again, Mike Tomlin extended it until 2024. A polarizing decision to say the very, very least. Would I have extended him? No. Do I get why they did it? Absolutely. Yes, I do.